Well, it's Thursday, boys and girls, and we have three more to read today and three more tomorrow, and we're done with Wayside, and we will be on spring break. So, yay, we can sleep in. I don't know about you guys, but Ollie and I are going to go out back and play some softball and walk the dog, stay busy, having a great vacation. And then hopefully, prayerfully, we'll be back after that to each other and actual learning in the classroom because we sure miss you guys. All right, so we'll go to chapter 25, a story that isn't about socks. It was class picture day. The children were all dressed up in their best clothes. Stephen came to school wearing a three-piece suit, gray trousers, a gray vest, and a gray jacket. Underneath his vest was a white shirt and red and gold striped tie. On his feet were hard black shiny shoes. He was very handsome. The other kids laughed when they saw him. "You've worn lots of silly costumes," said BB, "but this is the silliest one yet." BB was wearing yellow shorts, a red shirt with white polka dots, and a floppy green hat. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Settle down," she said. The children settled in their seats. Stephen remained standing. "Look at Stephen," said Mauricia. "His jacket is the same color as his pants." "They're supposed to be the same color," Stephen tried to explain. "It's a suit. And they're not called pants, they're called trousers." "Oh," said Mauricia. "Can you go swimming in your suit?" "No," said Stephen. "I can go swimming in my suit," said Mauricia. Mauricia had on a black and white striped bikini. "I'm sure Stephen's suit is good for other things," said Mrs. Jules. "It is," said Stephen. "Like what?" asked Todd. "Standing around and looking important," said Stephen. "What about sitting?" asked Todd. "No, I'm not supposed to sit," said Stephen. "The suit might get wrinkled. I'm just supposed to stand around and look important." "Oh," said Todd. Todd was wearing white shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, and sunglasses. Dee Dee crawled across the floor to Stephen so she could get a better look at his shoes. "They're so shiny," she said. "I can see myself." She knocked on one of his shoes with her fist. "They're hard, too." "Dee Dee, get up," said Mrs. Jules. Dee Dee stood up. She had on a black t-shirt that came across her knees. In the middle of the shirt was a red heart, and above the heart was sparkling silver and gold letters, and it said, "Love Goddess." "I bet they're good for kickball, huh, Stephen?" she asked, "since they're so hard." "No," said Stephen. "I can't run in them, and they hurt my feet." Why do you wear them?" asked Dee Dee. "Because they're uncomfortable," Stephen explained. "You have to wear uncomfortable shoes if you want to look important." "Oh," said Dee Dee. "What's the thing around your neck?" asked Paul. "It's a tie," said Stephen. "Does it keep your neck warm?" asked Paul. "No," said Stephen. "Does it hold your shirt on?" asked Paul. "No," said Stephen. "Well, what's it for?" asked Paul. "It chokes me," said Stephen. "Oh," said Paul. "The more it chokes me, the better I look." Stephen explained. "See?" He tightened his tie. "Oh, yeah," said Paul. "You look real handsome." Paul was wearing a cowboy and Indian pajamas. Stephen pulled his tie tighter. "Now how do I look?" he asked. "Wow, you look great," said DJ. "Pull it tighter." Stephen pulled his tie even tighter. "How's this?" he gasped. "You look great and very important," said DJ. DJ was wearing a toga made out of a bedsheet. "Pull it tighter," said BB. Stephen pulled on his tie. He could no longer breathe. "Tighter!" everyone yelled. Stephen pulled it even tighter. His eyes bulged and his nose turned blue. He had never been so handsome. "Tighter!" they all shouted. Stephen pulled his tie so hard that it ripped in half. "Oh!" the whole class groaned. "Darn," said Stephen. "Now I'm not great or important any more." "Yes, you are, Stephen," said Mrs. Jules. "You're just as great and as important as you ever were." "I am?" Stephen asked. "Certainly," said Mrs. Jules. "That tie didn't make you important. It doesn't matter what you wear on the outside. It's underneath that counts." "Underneath?" asked Stephen. "Yes," said Mrs. Jules. "If you want to be great and important, you have to wear expensive underpants." "Oh," said Stephen. Mrs. Jules had on a flowered tank top and a grass skirt. All right, chapter 26, The Mean Mrs. Jules. Everybody in Mrs. Jewell's class thought she was a very nice teacher. They were wrong. There's no such thing as a nice teacher. If you think you have a nice teacher, then you are wrong too. Inside every nice teacher, there's a mean and rotten teacher bursting to get out. The nicer the teacher is on the outside, the meaner the teacher is on the inside. As Mrs. Jewls was changing the bulletin board before class, a mean and rotten voice whispered inside her brain. "Give the children lots of work, lots of busy work today," it said. "Then make them do it over if their handwriting isn't perfect." Mrs. Jewls tried very hard to ignore the voice. She didn't like giving busy work. Instead, she tried to teach the children 3 new things every day. She believed that if they learned 3 new things every day, they would eventually learn everything there is to know. There are some classes where the teachers give so much busy work that the children never learn anything. "What do you care if the children learn anything?" asked the mean, rotten voice. "It's not your job to teach them. It's your job to punish them. Keep them in at recess. Hit them with the yardstick." The bell rang and all the kids scurried to their desks. "We are going to learn 3 new things today," Mrs. Jewls announced. "How to make pickles, 7 plus 4, and the capital of England." "The capital of England is London," said Mrs. Jewls. 7 plus 4 equals 11. And pickles are made by sticking cucumbers in brine. On her desk, she had a box of cucumbers and a vat of brine for demonstration. "Okay, Joe," said Mrs. Jewls. "How much is 7 plus 4? Joe shrugged. "But I just told you, Joe," said Mrs. Jewls. "Weren't you listening?" "I don't know," said Joe. "Okay, who can tell me how pickles are made?" "Yes, Jason?" 11, Jason declared. Mrs. Jewls frowned. "That's a correct answer," she said, "but unfortunately I didn't ask the right question. Can anyone tell me how pickles are made?" "Yes, Bibi." "In London," said Bibi. "I suppose they make pickles in London," said Mrs. Jewls. "Okay, let's start again. Calvin, what's the capital of England?" "Could you write England on the board?" asked Calvin. "I can do a lot better when I see it in a question." Mrs. Jewls wrote England on the board. "Oh, okay," said Calvin. Now that he saw the question, the capital of England is E. "Yes, that's one capital of England," said Mrs. Jewls. She had to admit. "Okay, I will say it one more time. The capital of England is London." "Isn't that where they make all the pickles?" asked Jenny. "No, they don't make all the pickles in London," explained Allison. "Just 11. "Well, where do they make the rest of the pickles?" asked Stephen. "Shut up!" shouted Mrs. Jewls. "Well, that does it. You're all staying inside for recess." Everyone stared at Mrs. Jewls. She had never told anyone to shut up. It was against class rules to use that expression. If she did, she had to write her name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Mrs. Jewls put her hand over her mouth and then took it away. "Oh dear, I'm very sorry," she said. "I don't know what came over me." She wrote her own name on the blackboard under the word discipline. "Perhaps you'll learn the lesson better if you write it down," she suggested. "Everyone, please take out a piece of paper and a pickle." Everybody laughed. "Pencil," snapped Mrs. Jewls. "I meant to say pencil. It just came out pickle." "I didn't know pickles came from pencils," said Jenny. "I thought they came from cucumbers." "I thought they came from London," said Todd. Mrs. Jewls made an ugly face. "Todd, didn't I just tell you to shut up?" "Oh, excuse me," she asked. She picked up her yardstick and held it over Todd's head. "Well, answer me," she demanded. "Didn't I just tell you to shut up?" "Yes," said Todd. "How dare you talk back to me?" snapped Mrs. Jewls. "Didn't I just tell you to shut up?" Todd kept his mouth shut. "Well, answer me," she demanded. Todd didn't know what to do. He nodded his head. "Keep still," ordered Mrs. Jewls. "Now, I don't want you to say another word. Is that clear?" Todd stared at her. "Is that clear?" she asked again. "Yes," Todd said meekly. Mrs. Jewls slammed down the yardstick. Todd quickly moved out of the way. The yardstick banged against his desk and broke in half. Mrs. Jewls stared at the 18 inches she held in her hand. "Oh, my goodness," she said. "I'm sorry, Todd. I don't know what's the matter with me today." I must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. She put a check next to her name under the word discipline. Okay, let me try to make this very simple, she said. If I had 7 cucumbers, and then I got 4 more cucumbers, and then I drop all of the cucumbers in brine and take them to the capital of England, what do I have? How many, and where am I? Huh? Said DJ. What? Asked John. Could you write the question on the board, please? Asked Rondi. Shut up, said Mrs. Jewls. She yelled this for a 3rd time. In a mocking voice, she said, Could you please write the question on the board? You kids think you are so cute. Well, we'll see just how cute you really are. She picked up a vat of brine from her desk. How would you all like it if I poured this on your heads? You won't be so cute when you're all shriveled up and covered with warts like pickles. She walked up and down the aisles carrying the pickle juice, glaring at the children. No one dared make a sound. She stopped next to Leslie. How about you, Leslie? She asked. How would you like pickled pigtails? Leslie trembled. Her pigtails wiggled. Well, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, Leslie, and if you don't answer them all correctly, I'm going to dump this on your head. Leslie gulped. Question 1, said Mrs. Jewls. How much is 7 plus 4? Leslie quickly tried to count on her fingers, but she didn't have enough. 11, she guessed. A look of disappointment came over Mrs. Jewls' face. Okay. Question 2. What is the capital of England? London? Leslie said nervously. Rats, said Mrs. Jewls. Okay, question 3. She looked down at the vat of brine she was holding and shook her head. She thought for a moment, then she smiled. What's the name of my cousin who lives in Vermont? Leslie had no idea. She just had to take a wild guess. She closed her eyes and said, Fred Jewls? Wrong, exclaimed Mrs. Jewls. She raised the vat of brine high above Leslie's head and started to tip it over. Paul jumped out of his seat. Those pigtails had once saved his life. Now it was his turn to return the favor. He pushed the vat of brine back the other way. It was just enough push to get it up straight, but he pushed too hard. It poured all over Mrs. Jewls, drenching her. Paul froze in terror. Mrs. Jewls blinked her eyes. Pickle juice down her face. Thanks, Paul, she said. I needed that. The brine had cured her. She circled her name on the blackboard and sent herself home early on the kindergarten bus. All right, chapter 27, the last one for today. Lost and Found. Joy and Maurecia were best friends. They sat down on the grass to eat their lunches, but then Maurecia remembered she needed chocolate milk. She went to get some for Miss Mush. When she returned, she couldn't find her lunch. What happened to my lunch? She asked. Joy looked at her, then shrugged her shoulders. I set my lunch down right here, said Maurecia. You saw me, didn't you? Joy shook her head. I put it right here. Then I went to Miss Mush's room to get some chocolate milk. I had a peanut butter and banana sandwich. There's no way I can eat a peanut butter and banana sandwich without chocolate milk. Joy shrugged her shoulders. Maurecia didn't know what to do. A half sip of your milk? Asked Joy. It was hard for Joy to talk because her mouth was full of peanut butter and bananas. Maurecia handed Joy the carton of chocolate milk. She took a big drink, then swallowed. Maurecia looked all around for her lunch. She crawled in the dirt as she searched through the bushes. Any luck? Asked Joy as she finished Maurecia's chocolate milk. I found it, Maurecia exclaimed. Joy coughed out the chocolate milk. You did? She asked, and then coughed again. Maurecia crawled out of the bushes, holding a paper sack. She sat back down next to Joy and opened it. Is it your lunch? Asked Maurecia. No, said Maurecia. Too bad, said Joy. It's money, exclaimed Maurecia. Joy's eyes nearly popped out of her head as she looked in the bag. It was stuffed with dollar bills. And there weren't just $1 bills. There were $5 bills, some $10 bills, mostly $20 bills. We found $1 million. We? Asked Maurecia. They counted the money. It wasn't $1 million. It was $20,605. Guess I need to go back and study my math, huh? It was $20,650. Let's split it, said Joy. You take half and I'll take half. Maybe I should show it to Louis, said Mauricio. Louis, exclaimed Joy, are you crazy? Let's spend it. We can buy a skateboard or a bicycle or a horse or a fancy car or an airplane. I like taking the bus, said Mauricio. You could buy ice cream, said Joy. All the ice cream you'd ever want for the rest of your life. She knew Mauricio loved ice cream more than anything else in the world. Mauricio smiled as she thought about it. No, I better show it to Louis. He'll know what to do. You'll just get in trouble, warned Joy. Louis will think you robbed a bank. You'll go to jail for the rest of your life. Louis knows I'm not a bank robber, said Mauricio. But what if real bank robbers find out that you have their money, asked Joy. They'll come after you and murder you. Oh, I didn't think about that, said Mauricio. You better give it to me, said Joy. Louis will protect me, said Mauricio. She walked across the playground. Louis was talking to Terrence. He said, if you ever tie Leslie's pigtails in a tetherball pole again, I'll... Louis, look, said Mauricio. She held a paper sack up in his face. No, thank you, Mauricio. I'm not hungry, said Louis. It's not my lunch, said Mauricio. Look inside. Louis took the bag from her and looked inside. Very nice, he said, then gave it back to her. Now I want you to go and untie Leslie and tell her... He suddenly stopped talking and blinked his eyes. He looked at Terrence, then Mauricio, then Terrence, then Mauricio again, then took the paper sack. Let me see that again, he said. Mauricio gave him the bag. Hey, what about me? Asked Terrence. Get lost, Jack Frost, said Louis. Terrence ran away. Did you rob a bank? Asked Louis. No, I found it in the bushes, said Mauricio. I believe you, said Louis. We'll have to put it in a lost and found. I know, said Mauricio. Whoever lost it is probably very sad. But if no one claims it in 2 weeks, you can have it, said Louis. He took the bag of money and headed toward the office. Joy was waiting for Louis at the door. Hey, Louis, I lost a bag full of money. Have you seen it? Help! Screamed Leslie from the tetherball court. A week later, Mauricio was eating lunch alone. She was eating a piece of sweet potato pie. Joy was crawling all around in the dirt, looking for bags of money. Mauricio, said Louis, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Mr. Finch. Mr. Finch is an old man with white hair and long white beard. He shook Mauricio's hand with both of his hands. It's your money, isn't it? Mauricio said. Mr. Finch nodded. It was my life savings, he said. For 50 years I made pencils. I got a penny for every pencil I made. I hate pencils. But finally I saved enough money to quit my job and do what I always wanted to do. What's that? Asked Mauricio. I'm going to open my own ice cream parlor, he said, then started to cry. When I lost my money, I thought I'd have to start making pencils again. Mauricio cried too. Hey there. I want you to have this, blubbered Mr. Finch. He gave her an envelope containing $500. It was the second largest amount of money Mauricio had ever had. But I will give you free ice cream for the rest of your life at my ice cream parlor, he promised. Thank you, said Mauricio. No, thank you, said Mr. Finch. I'm so glad someone as kind and as honest as you found it. There are many dishonest people in the world. It's good to know there are still good people, too. They hugged each other. Joy crawled out of the bushes. Hey, who's that? She asked. That's Mr. Finch, said Mauricio. It is his money. Look, he gave me a reward of $500, and I'll get free ice cream for the rest of my life. Well, what about me? Joy demanded. Don't I get anything? Oh, dear me, said Mr. Finch. I didn't realize there was someone else involved. Mauricio would have never found the money if it hadn't been for me, said Joy. What did you do? Asked Louis. I stole her lunch, Joy said proudly. Mr. Finch gave her a pencil. So, that's the end for today. Tomorrow will be the last day before we go to spring break. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you one last time before spring break tomorrow. Bye, everyone.